The extensive bombing of Laos by the United States during the Vietnam War is one of the lesser-known but significant chapters of 20th century history. From 1964 to 1973, Laos became the most heavily bombed country per capita in history, despite the U.S. not officially being at war with the nation. The reasons behind this intense bombing campaign are rooted in the geopolitical and military strategies of the Cold War, particularly the U.S.'s efforts to contain communism in Southeast Asia. The Vietnam War was part of the broader Cold War struggle between the United States and the Soviet Union, with both superpowers supporting opposing sides in conflicts around the globe. In Southeast Asia, the U.S. aimed to prevent the spread of communism, subscribing to the domino theory, which suggested that if one country fell to communism, neighboring countries would follow. Vietnam, divided into the communist North and the anti-communist South, became a focal point of this struggle. Laos, a small, landlocked country bordering Vietnam, became embroiled in the conflict due to its strategic location. The country was officially neutral according to the 1954 Geneva Accords, but it was increasingly drawn into the conflict as North Vietnam sought to use Laotian territory to support its war efforts in South Vietnam. One of the primary reasons for the extensive bombing of Laos was the presence of the Ho Chi Minh Trail, a complex network of supply routes used by North Vietnam to transport troops, weapons, and supplies into South Vietnam. The trail ran through Laos and Cambodia, allowing North Vietnamese forces to bypass the heavily fortified Demilitarized Zone, DMZ, that separated North and South Vietnam. The U.S. military recognized the strategic importance of the Ho Chi Minh Trail and sought to disrupt the flow of supplies and reinforcements. Since the trail was hidden within dense jungle and mountainous terrain, it was difficult to target effectively with conventional ground operations. As a result, the U.S. turned to aerial bombardment as the primary means of interdicting the trail. To counter the use of the Ho Chi Minh Trail, the U.S. launched two major bombing campaigns in Laos, Operation Barrel Roll and Operation Steel Tiger. Operation Barrel Roll 1964-1973. Initially, this operation was focused on northern Laos, targeting the communist Pathet Lao forces and their North Vietnamese allies. The Pathet Lao, backed by North Vietnam, were fighting against the Royal Lao government, which was supported by the U.S. As the war progressed, the scope of Barrel Roll expanded to include attacks on the Ho Chi Minh Trail in eastern Laos. Operation Steel Tiger 1965-1973. This operation specifically targeted the Ho Chi Minh Trail in southeastern Laos. The goal was to disrupt the movement of North Vietnamese troops and supplies by bombing key parts of the trail. The operation involved intense and sustained bombing, with the U.S. dropping millions of tons of ordnance on the region. The bombing campaign in Laos was conducted largely in secret, without the knowledge of the American public or much of the international community. The U.S. government officially denied involvement in Laos, and the operations were classified, often referred to as the Secret War. This secrecy was partly due to Laos's official neutrality and the U.S.'s desire to avoid provoking further international criticism. The Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, played a significant role in the secret war in Laos, supporting anti-communist forces such as the Hmong tribes, who were recruited and trained to fight against the Pathet Lao and North Vietnamese. The CIA also coordinated airstrikes and provided logistical support to the Royal Lao government and its allies. The bombing of Laos had devastating humanitarian consequences. Between 1964 and 1973, more than 2 million tons of bombs were dropped on Laos, surpassing the total amount dropped on Germany and Japan during World War II. The bombings resulted in widespread destruction, displacing hundreds of thousands of civilians and causing significant loss of life. One of the most tragic legacies of the bombing campaign is the large number of unexploded ordnance, UXO, left behind. It is estimated that up to 30% of the bombs dropped on Laos did not detonate on impact, leaving the countryside littered with deadly explosives. These UXOs have continued to kill and maim civilians long after the end of the war, making farming and daily life perilous in many parts of the country. Efforts to clear these UXOs have been ongoing for decades, but are far from complete. The extensive bombing of Laos by the United States was driven by the strategic imperatives of the Vietnam War, particularly the need to disrupt the Ho Chi Minh Trail and support anti-communist forces in the region. While the U.S. achieved some tactical successes, the long-term consequences for the people of Laos were severe. The bombings caused immense human suffering and left a legacy of unexploded ordnance that continues to affect the country to this day. The secret war in Laos remains a sobering reminder of the human cost of war and the often hidden consequences of military conflict.